first step, we'll create folder structure for our website. For this project, I already prepared some materials that we'll use for our website. For example, we have these images that we'll use, some of those for our backgrounds, some of those will be for our links. Also, we have our logo, etc. Also, I have prepared some CSS styles that we'll use to customize the appearance of our HTML elements. And I create already text that we'll use inside of our website just to save some time with typing. Okay, so now we can create folder for our website. Let's create new folder. Let's call it website. And inside of this folder, let's create a few subfolders. First one will be pages folder, where we're gonna place all pages for our website. Next one will be images, where we're gonna place our images. And also, we'll create styles, where we're gonna place our CSS styles. So basically, this is how website folder structure will look like. Okay, in this step, we'll create basic HTML document structure. So let's open our text editor. First line of code will be doctype declaration with value HTML, which means that we are using HTML version 5. Then let's define start and end HTML tags. And inside of it, let's define head and body HTML elements. For head, let's define title HTML element. This page is gonna be our home page, so let's set here home. Okay, so let's save our document for now. We need to save this one inside of our website folder. And let's save it inside of pages folder. We'll call this one home.html. Okay. We can test our home page quickly, so let's go in website folder, pages folder, and here it is. Let's open it. I will use Google Chrome for this one. And yep, here it is. This is our empty home page. Currently we have just title, that is our home title. Body is empty because we use title HTML element and body is empty. Okay. Our web page or home page will look like this. So basically we have header part, we have middle part, and we have footer part of home page. Okay, so let's comment out inside of body all sections that we will have. So as we said, first part will be header. The second part will be middle part. And the last part of web page will be footer. Okay, so comments are always good option in cases if your web page has a lot of content. So you will know in any moment what is going on in your web page. And of course, for other developers who will dive in your code, it's going to be much easier to see what is going on. So let's save our changes for now. Okay, in this step we will create a logo for our website. At first our logo will be part of header, so let's create one div here with div start and div end tag. And inside of it we just need to define our image HTML element. It's gonna be on the left upper corner inside of our website. Okay, so let's define image HTML element. Okay, let's define src and alt HTML attributes. Okay, so for this lesson, I have already prepared our logo inside of images folder. So I will copy this one from images folder that is on desktop. And I will place it inside of images folder inside of our website folder. Okay. So now with image HTML element, we just need to point on that logo. We are currently inside of homepage, right? And homepage is inside of pages folder. So we need to go one step back, and we can do that with ... So now we are here, and now we can access our images folder. And from images folder, we want to point on logo, and logo is PNG file. So let's set logo.png. Okay. Like alternative text, we'll set logo not loaded. It's gonna be display if image is not loaded for any reason. So let's save our changes and let's refresh our web page. And here it is. By default, our logo will be in original size, so I will rescale this one a little bit. I will set height to 120 pixels. Okay, so let's save that. So now when we refresh our page, definitely this fits better than previous version. Okay. Now we can test our alternative text. We can remove G and let's save that change. So now we'll try to access image that doesn't exist, and yep, we will get our logo not loaded text that we have set for our alt HTML attribute. Okay. So we can put our G back. Let's save that change. And let's quickly check. Yep, we have our logo once again back. Next thing that we can do for our logo, we can create that our logo is linked for home page. So how we can do that? Actually, it's very easy. We just need to add our anchor start tag before our image and anchor end tag after our image logo. Can align this a little bit. For anchor start tag, let's define href attribute. So basically with href attribute, we want to point on home page. Basically we are currently on home page, but let's set home.html. Okay, so let's save that. Okay, let's go back in our web browser. Currently this is just image, as you can see. But now this is a link, so when we click on it, we'll be redirected on our home page. In this step, we'll create navigation for our website. So our navigation will be in the top right corner of the screen. That is a part of header, so let's create one more div here. Okay, inside of this div, let's create one link with anchor HTML element. Let's define our href attribute. Okay, so first link will be for home page, so let's define a label for this one. And let's set home.html. So basically this is page that we are currently. Let's duplicate this line of code with Ctrl D. Next link will be for about page. Third one will be for course page. And last one will be for contact page. Currently we have only home page, but let's set here about page. We're gonna create this one later. Do the same for course page and also for contact page. Okay, now let's save our changes. If we refresh our web page, we can see we have our navigation and we should set it on the right top corner. So how we can do that? As I said in the start of this lesson, I have already prepared some CSS classes or styles. So inside of style file, I have CSS classes that we'll use for our website. So let's select all and let's copy this content. Okay, so now let's go back in our text editor. Let's create new blank document and let's paste content that we have copied. Okay, basically these are CSS classes that we'll use, so let's save this document. Let's save this one inside of styles folder that we have inside of our website. And I will call styles.css this file. Make sure that you're using CSS extension for this file. So, these are CSS classes that we'll use to change appearance of our HTML elements. For example, we have classes to change color text, color background, etc. And basically all these classes we'll use inside all our website that we have. If you take a look, some of those will change color of text, some of those we'll use to align elements, some to change background, and now as you can see we have classes that we'll use for our navigation. Okay, so let's apply these classes on our navigation. So let's go back on our home page, and first step that we need to do, we need to link our style CSS with our home page. So let's do that. For our link tag, let's use rel and href HTML attributes. Type of document that we want to link is style sheet. And for href, we need to set or to point on our CSS file. Our CSS file is inside of styles folder. And we are currently inside of pages folder on home page. So first we need to go step back from pages folder to access styles folder. We can do that with .. Okay, so now we are here. Now we can access the styles folder. So let's do that. And from styles folder, let's use styles CSS file. So let's set that. Okay. So now we can use all classes from this file inside of our home page. So first thing, let's use our navigation links class. So let's copy it. And inside of our div start tag, let's define class HTML attribute and let's paste our class here. Okay, so now for single link elements, let's apply another class. Let's use navigation link CSS class for those. So let's create class HTML attribute here and let's paste the class that we copied here. Okay, now we have two different classes. So let's copy this class and let's apply it on all other links. Okay, so let's save our changes and let's go back in our web browser. So if we refresh our web page, so now you can see we have our navigation in top right corner like we want. Okay, so what actually we have done here, we can see inside of our home page, let's right click and let's select inspect or inspect element, depends what browser do you use. So when we click on it, on the right hand side, you can see how structure of our document looks like. If we expand head, if we expand our head, we can see we have title and link that we have defined inside of head. Okay, if we expand body, we can structure that we have inside of our body. So if we expand first div that we have, we can see that is content of our header. We have a link for our logo. This is our logo. Okay. And when we expand our navigation, we can see we have our navigation links. So if we just click on Start div tag, down here you can see CSS class that we use for this div. These are all properties that we have. So if we uncheck our properties, we can see what every single property do for our navigation. For example, float right. Float right will be set our navigation in the right part of our screen. Margin right will add some additional margin on the right part of our navigation. Margin top will add some additional margin on the top of our navigation. If we click on a single link, we can see navigation link CSS class that we use. With color, we can change color of text. Font size will change font size. Text decoration will remove underline. Ending right. Font weight. And also we have transition, that is hover effect that we have on our text. Okay, so basically on this way, you can check structure and CSS classes that we use in our document. So as we said, you just need to click right and select inspect. Let's create our social media links inside of our footer. First, let's create our footer with one div. Okay, inside of div, let's create another div where we're gonna place all our image links. Now let's create the first link. Let's define href attribute. It's gonna be image link, so inside of our link, let's create image HTML element. And let's define src and alt HTML attributes. Okay, first one will be for our Facebook page. So inside of our images folder that we have on our desktop, I have prepared our Facebook logo that we will use. So I will copy this one and I will paste it inside of our images folder in website. So now we have logo and our Facebook logo. So like we set our logo here, we can do the same for our Facebook logo. Now instead of logo.png, we need to use FB, that is also PNG image. Okay, like alternative text, let's set FB not loaded. For href, you can set your Facebook address, but for this lesson, we'll leave this as blank. Okay, so let's save our changes now. If we refresh our web page, here it is. This is our Facebook link, but it should be inside the footer. That should be on the bottom of our screen. So how we can do that? Inside of our styles file, we have footer class that will create our footer that will be positioned on the bottom of our screen. We'll create some background color for our footer, also color for our text, and content will be centered. So let's copy our footer class, and for our footer div, let's create class HTML attribute. Let's paste our class that we have copied here. Okay, and let's save our changes now. So now when we refresh our web page, we have a footer that is in purple color. Okay, and we have our Facebook logo that is quite too big, so let's use height HTML attribute to resize it. Like a size value, let's set 50 pixels. So now when we refresh our web page, here it is. This is our Facebook logo, now in appropriate size. And this is our link for our Facebook page. Now let's create two more, one for Instagram and one for Twitter page. Like we use our Facebook logo, I already prepared our Instagram logo, so I will copy it from here and paste it here inside of our images folder. And let's do the same for our Twitter logo. Let's paste it here. Okay, so I will use our Instagram and Twitter logo. I can copy complete link because the concept is totally same. And let's paste it two more times here. Okay, so first one will be for our Instagram page. So let's replace FB with IG. It's also PNG image. Also, we can change our alternative text to IG not loaded. Okay, and let's replace FB with TW for our Twitter page. Okay, so now when we save our changes and refresh our web page, we have our social media links for our Facebook, Instagram, and the Twitter page. As I said, you can set your links for href for your social media pages. Now let's create copyright link for our website. Below our images link, let's create simple paragraph with text, copyright, then C, then masterminds, and then R. Okay, now we want to replace C with copyright and R with original sign. So how we can do that? Let's go back in our web browser. Let's Google copyright sign HTML. Okay, we can open this first link. And here we can see how we can use special symbols inside of your website. For example, like this currency symbol. Okay, so you can use any of those in your website. We just need to find copyright sign, and here it is. We just need to copy this text from here and go back in text editor, and let's replace C with that text. Okay, let's do the same for R. Original sign is the first one below, so let's copy this text. And now let's replace R with that text. Okay. Let's save first our changes. We can close this one. Now when we refresh our page, here it is. We have copyright text with copyright sign, masterminds, and original sign. Original sign is usually slightly above other text, so let's do that. We can surround our original sign with SUP or SUP HTML tags. So let's save this change. And now when we refresh our page, we have our original sign that is slightly above other text. Next thing that we can do, if you take a look, between our image links and our copyright text, we have quite too large space, so let's remove that. We have empty 0 or margin top 0 class inside of our styles file, so that class will remove all additional margin on the top of HTML element. So let's use this one. Let's create for our paragraph class HTML attribute. Let's paste our class here. So now when we save our changes and refresh our page, take a look on this space here. As you can see, now we have removed that additional space that we had. Okay, next thing, for our masterminds, let's create email link. So let's go back in our text editor and let's surround mastermind text with anchor start and anchor end tag. Okay, for anchor start tag, let's define href attribute. Like content, we need to set mail to part first, and then let's set any email address where you want to send these emails. We'll use some address at mail.com. Okay, so let's save this change. So now if we refresh our page, we have a link that we can click, and default email sending software will be opened with predefined email destination address that we actually have set like destination address for mail to part. Okay, so we can close this one. Now as you can see, link is other color than other text, so let's change this. From our file, we have gray text class that will create gray text for any text that we want, so let's copy that class. And for start tag, let's define class HTML attribute. And let's paste our class here. So now if we save our changes, let's go back in the web browser, and here it is. Now we have same text color like copyright text. Our link still works, that is good. So now we have copyright link for our website. Okay, let's create background for our homepage. For this lesson, I already prepared image that we'll use like background. So this is the one. So I will copy it. And I will paste this image inside of our images folder for our website. Okay, so now we'll use this one like background for our homepage. So let's go back in our text editor. Now inside of head, let's define style block with style start and style end tag. Inside of this block, we're gonna define all CSS classes that we'll use only for our homepage. So I already prepared one CSS class, so I will copy it. And let's paste it here. Let's align our code a little bit. Okay, so basically, body class is class that will be applied on complete body in HTML document. So we said that we will have robot thin font inside of our document. Then this is background that we will use like background for document. As we said, that is background that we set inside of images folder. This will be position of our background, and this is size for our background. So let's save our changes. So now when we refresh our page, here it is. This is our background that we'll use for our home page. Let's create main content for our home page. So let's define div for our middle part. And inside of it, let's define simple heading element. It's going to be h1. And like content, let's set HTML, learn it from scratch, course. Okay, let's save this change. And let's go back in our web browser. Let's refresh our page. And here it is. This is our heading element. So at first, I want to set this text to be same color like copyright text. So let's define class HTML attribute here. Okay. And from styles file, let's use gray text like value for our class. Okay, so when we save our changes, when we refresh our page, here it is. This is our text now in the gray color. So next thing that we want to do, this text is on left side and we want to be centralized inside of our screen. So let's set that. For our div, let's define class HTML attribute. And from style file, let's use this TAC or text align center class on that div. So let's paste it here. Okay, let's save this change. If we go back in our web browser and refresh our page, now our content is centralized inside of our web page. Now let's create that other text below our main text. So let's define simple paragraph and let's set get started with web development. Let's save this text. Let's refresh our page and here it is. But now I want to set this text to be the same yellow color like text that we have in our navigation. So let's set that with class HTML attribute. From our file, let's use yellow text and let's apply it here. So now when we save this, okay, let's go back in our web browser. Now let's refresh our page and here it is. Now we have our text in yellow color just like we want. So next thing that we want to do for our home page, let's define our image links inside of our home page. So first thing, from our images folder, I already prepared images that we'll use for our about, contact and course page. So I will copy first for about page and I will paste this image inside of our images folder in our website. So now inside of our text editor, below our paragraph, let's define image HTML element with src and alt HTML attributes. For src, we want to point on our about image on the same way like we point on our logo. So let's define images. Now instead of logo we want to use about, that is also png. So let's set about.png. And like alternative text, let's set about not loaded. Let's save the change and go back in web browser. So when we refresh our page, now we have our image that is quite too big. So let's resize it with height HTML attribute. So let's set here height. And like value, let's set 250 pixels. So let's save it now. So when we refresh our page, here it is. This is definitely more appropriate size for our link. But currently this is just the image, so let's create this image to be a link. So how we can do that? Just surround our image with anchor start and anchor end tag. Okay, we can align this a little bit. Okay, let's define our href attribute and we want to be this link for our home page, for about page. So let's copy about and let's paste it here. So now when we save this and go back in our web browser, let's refresh our page. Now we have links, so when we click on it, we'll get file is not found because we're trying to reach about page that currently doesn't exist. Okay, but we have this link that works. That is good. Okay, now let's create text about below our image. So below our image, we want to add span and let's add about text. So let's save this for now. When we refresh our page, now we have about text, but I want this text to be same like text that we have in our navigation. So let's change this. Okay, we want to use same class navigation link, so let's copy it. And for our anchor, let's define class and let's paste that class that we had copied. Okay, so when we save this and refresh our web page, now we have text that is same like text in navigation, but let's make this text align in center with our image. So how we can do that? So let's define style, then let's define display, and like value let's set inline grid. On this way our text and image will be centralized. So now you can see we have our image and text that is centralized below it. Okay, let's create the same for our course and contact page. So first thing, we can copy this link because the concept is totally the same, and let's paste it 2 more times here. But now, instead of our about, we want to use other images. So, because if we save our changes and refresh our page, you can see we have 3 but about links. Instead of second and third, we want to use course and contact. So, from our images folder, I will copy first course image. So now, if you use for our second link, instead of about PNG, we set course PNG because we want to use course image. Also, we can change this text to course not loaded. Also, this is gonna be a link for our course page, so let's copy it from here. So let's paste it instead of about. Okay, and let's quickly change this label about to course. Okay, so now when we save these changes and refresh our web page, we can see now we have our course link for our course page. Okay, let's do the same for our contact page. So let's go back in our images folder. I will copy this contact image. Okay, so inside of our images, inside of website, I will paste this image. So this is contact image that we will use for our contact page. So now for our third link, instead of about, let's use contact. Also, we can rename about to contact not loaded. For about page, we will use contact.html. Okay, and label should be contact. Okay, just 1 second. Here, this last link, from some reason, is home, and it should be contact. Sorry for that. Okay, so let's save our changes. Let's go back in our web browser. So when we refresh our page, now we have our contact, also image link for our contact page. So for now, we have link for our about page that currently doesn't exist, for our course page that also currently doesn't exist, and also we have a link for contact page that currently doesn't exist. So we have links like images links inside of our central part, and also we have our navigation links for our pages. Home page is completed now, so next one that we'll work on is about page. In this step, we'll create our about page. So let's go back in our text editor and let's create a new blank document. If you take a look, inside of our home page, we have our header, we have our footer, and also we have a middle part. So we can copy complete content of our home page and let's paste it inside of newly created document. Okay, let's save this document. Let's save it like about.html. Okay, so now, if you take a look, Inside of our About page, we just need to change these to About. Also, we will use another body. Our heading and our footer are basically the same, and we just need to replace our middle part. Also, as I said, we'll use another body class. So I already prepared body class that we'll use for body inside of our About page. Okay, so let's replace our current body with this new one. Let's align our code a little bit. So now, body class will be applied on complete body in this document. So we set 15 pixels for text, you're about to thin like one family. And also we are using background about. That is a new image that we will use for background in About page. This is the one, so I will copy this image. And I will paste it inside of our images folder inside of our website. So this is image that will be applied for our background for About page. Okay, so let's save our changes. Let's go back in our web browser. Let's refresh our page. Now we can open our About page. And here it is. If you take a look, home background is different in comparing to background that we use for About page. Okay, next thing that we will do for About page, for our middle part, let's define one simple div. And inside of it, let's define heading element h1 with the text about our website. Let's save our changes. So when we refresh our page, here it is. This is our heading element. But if you take a look, heading element in home page is gray color at first. So let's change that for our heading in About page. So let's create class HTML attribute here. Okay. And from styles file, let's use gray text just to change color of our text. So let's paste it here. So now when we save our changes and refresh our page, our text is gray. Okay, now let's centralize our text. So for that, also from styles file, we will use TAC or text align center. So let's paste it here. So now when we save our changes, let's go back in our web browser. And here it is. Our heading is in gray color and it's centralized inside of our screen. Now let's create that other text for About page. As I said in start of this lesson, I already prepared that text. This is the one. So I will copy it. And now, below our heading element, let's define pre-HTML element. So that is the element that will follow original text structure that we have. So let's paste our text here. We can align our text a little bit. Okay, we missed this one and this one also. Nice. So now if you take a look in this text, we have various text formatting elements. For example, mark that will highlight text that we have in the middle. Okay. We have B element that will create bold text. We have U element that will create underlined text. We have I element that will create italic text, etc. Let's save our changes. Let's go back in our web browser. So now we have text for About page, but I want also for this text to be same color like heading text that we have. So this text instead of black will be gray. So let's change that. For our pre-element, let's define class HTML attribute. And let's apply gray text class for it. So we can copy it from here. Let's paste it here. Save our changes. And go back in our browser. And here it is. Now we have great text for both for our heading and also for the rest of our text. But how we can improve our code? Basically, great text is applied on both on heading and pre-element. So we can use on complete div class HTML attribute. Okay, and let's apply great text. We can copy it from here. Let's paste it here. And now we can remove our class HTML attribute from here. And also we can remove our great text class from here. So if we save our changes, let's go back in our browser. Basically everything is the same, but we improved our code because our code is now much cleaner and we don't have duplicated code with great text class. Okay, this is our about page that is completed. About page is completed now, so next one that we will work on is course page. In this step, we're gonna create our course page. Currently, we only have our navigation links, and we now need to create this course HTML page. So let's go back in our text editor and let's create new blank document. If we take a look, on our home page we have our header, footer, and middle part, and the same thing for our about page. Middle part is only difference. So we can copy complete content from about page and let's paste it inside of our newly created document. Okay, let's save this document for now. And let's call it course.html. So basically, now we have our course page. We just need to make some changes. At first, let's change title. This is gonna be course title. And as we said, our header and our footer will be the same, and we just need to change our middle part. So let's delete our middle part for now. Also, we'll use another body, like CSS body, and I already prepared inside of our styles folder from course file. This is body that we'll use. So I will copy it. And I will paste it instead of our current body. Let's align our code a little bit. So basically this body will be applied on our complete body. We have robot.in text. Also we have new background, that is background course. So if we take a look inside of our images folder in our website, we currently don't have our background course background. So from this images folder, I will copy background course. For now, we have set inside of our file background that we are using. Okay, so we just need to paste it here. And now we have our background for our course page. This is position for our background and these are height and width. Okay, so let's save our changes for now. If we refresh our web page, we can go on our course page now. And here it is. If you take a look on background here, about and home page have different background in comparing to our course page. So next step that we'll do, let's create our heading for our course page. So at first, for our middle section, let's create one simple div. And let's define heading h1 element. Like content, let's set this is content of the course. So let's save our changes. Let's go back in web browser. So when you refresh our page, we have our heading, but currently font is black, and let's change this. We want to use class HTML attribute, and we want to apply from our styles file gray text class. Let's paste it here. So basically now our heading will be in gray color. So let's save our changes. Let's refresh our page, and here it is. Next step, from our About page, we can see that the title or heading is centralized, so let's do the same for our course page. We just need to add one more CSS class. From styles file, let's use TAC or Text Align Center. So let's paste it here. So now when we save our changes and refresh our page, and yep, this is our centralized and gray text for our heading. Next step, let's create content of the course. As I said in the start of this lesson, I already prepared some texts. So basically one of those is this text. So I will use DT elements and DD elements that are basically components of description list. So first I need to create one simple description list with DL start and end tags. So now we can copy complete content from this file and let's paste it here. Okay, let's align our code a little bit. Okay, I missed first one. So basically we have DT elements that represent title of list element, and also we have DD elements that represent description that is related with that title. We can remove from here. And now we have our description list, so let's save our current changes and see what we have done for now. If we refresh our page, now we have our description list, and let's start with the changes. At first, let's change appearance of our title and description. How we can do that? Well, in Styles folder, I already prepared some styles for our course. I prepared our DT and DD classes that we'll use, so I will copy it. And inside of our style block, below our body, let's paste our content. Let's align our code a little bit. Okay, so basically DT means that every DT element will have this class. So our text will be bold, color text will be yellow, and font size will be 20 pixels. And DD means that every DD element in this list will have bold text and text will be gray. So let's save our changes and let's go back in our web browser. When we refresh our page, and here it is. We have our title elements that are in yellow color and description of elements in gray color. But let's now create two columns more instead of one column that we have for now. So basically we'll have three columns. So how we can do that? At first, let's copy this course list class. We'll use this one a little bit later, but let's copy it. We can close this document, and below our DD class, let's paste our content. Let's align our class a little bit. So for now, we have one description list element. Inside of this description list element, we have complete content of our course. If we take a look on our DL element, you can see I already separate 3 sections. So I want to create 3 separate description lists from those. Okay, this is gonna be first one. So this is gonna be a second, and this is gonna be third description list. So after lesson 8, let's close our description list here. Now let's create a new one with start DL. After lesson 16, let's close that DL. And let's open one more here. This one already have DL land tag. So now we have 3 description lists. So let's save our changes. When you refresh our page, yes, we have 3 description lists, but still in one column. So why is that? Well, basically, DL or description list is block element. So every DL will start in new line and will take complete line. So how we can fix this? At first, let's surround our DL elements with one div. Let's close our div here. Let's align our code a little bit. So for start div tag, let's define class HTML attribute. And from styles file, let's use display if or inline flex. Basically, with this class, we will display even block elements like inline elements. So let's save our changes and take a look. Currently is in one column. When we refresh our page, we have all DL elements displayed like inline elements. Okay, we definitely need to polish a little bit our DL elements, so let's do that next. For our DL elements, let's use our course list class. So for first one, for the second one, and third one, we need to use our course list class. Let's paste our class here. Now we can copy complete class from here. And let's paste it for our second DL element and for third one. So what we have done here, basically we set that minimum width will be 300 pixels. Then our padding will be 20 pixels. And margin left will be 100 pixels. So let's save our changes and I will show you this in a web browser. Let's refresh our page. And here it is. Looks prettier definitely, right? Okay, if we click on a right click and select inspect, we can see structure of our HTML document. If we click on DL start tag, we can see our course list. So if we uncheck our property, we can see this is min width, without, and with min width. Property, this is our padding, okay? And also, this is without margin left and with margin left. Okay. So basically this is our course page and our course page is done. The course page is completed now. So next one that we will work on is contact page. In this step, we're going to create base for our contact page. So currently we have just link for our contact page, but in this step we're going to create this contact.html document. Okay, let's go back in our text editor and let's create a blank new document. if you take a look inside of our course document, here or inside of our web browser, you can see our course page, about page and home page have header, footer, and the middle part. So basically we can use our course page like base for our contact page. So let's copy complete content of our course page and let's paste it here. Okay, let's save our document and let's save it like contact.html. Now we're going to make some changes here. At first, we will not use classes that we use for our course page, so let's remove this. We're going to change our body and also let's change our title to contact. As we said, our header and our footer will be same for this page, so we just need to change our middle part, so let's delete our middle part for now. Now, if you take a look, we're using background course for our contact page, so let's change this. Also, I already prepared for this page body class that we'll use, so this is the one, so I will copy it and I will replace current body with a new body. Let's align our code a little bit. Okay, so we are using background contact, and if you take a look inside of our website folder and images folder, you can see that we currently don't have our background contact here. So I will copy that image from our images folder, and here it is. So I will copy it. And I will paste it inside of our images folder inside of our website. Okay, so now we have image that we'll use for our contact page. This is position and this is height and width for our image background. So let's save our changes. Okay, let's go back in our web browser. When we refresh our page, now we can access to our contact page, so let's do that from our navigation. And here it is. Basically, if you take a look on this background and background that we have for course, about, and home page, you can see that contact has another background for this page. So now we have base for our contact page. We're going to create map for our contact page. So first, let's create one simple div for our middle part with div start and div end tag. Inside of this div, we're going to have our map, and also we're going to have our question form. So now, for our map part, we will create one iframe where we're gonna load Google Map with our location. So how we can do that? Actually, this is very simple. We just need to find some website. I already have address of one website where you can generate your Google Map. So this is the one that we'll use, and here it is. On this website, you can generate map for your website. You just need to enter address and click Activate Map, and code will be created for your website. I will use this default one that is some address in Dublin. So let's click Activate Map. This is code, and this is code, as I said, for some address in Dublin. You just need to click on this code and you can copy it. And now just paste that code for our map section. And here it is. Let's align our code a little bit. So let's place our iframe in a new line. Let's find end of our iframe. Here it is. Let's place this also in new line. Let's place the end of the div in new line, and let's remove our new line from here. Okay. So now, this is our iframe, and these are HTML attributes for our iframe. Okay, so we have width, height, src with source of a map. We have frame border. Also, we have scrolling, margin height, margin width, and also we have this link that will allow us to use various views on our map. Okay, so these are attributes for our iframe. So let's save this document. And let's go back in our web browser. When we refresh our page, here it is. This is our Google map with our location in Dublin. So basically we have base for our contact map. Let's customize our map to take just the first part of our screen. For our map, we already have one div, and let's create one div for our question form section. So basically now we have div for our map and for our question, and let's surround these two divs with one new parent div. Okay, let's align our code a little bit. Okay, so now we have new parent div for our map and question form. Now, instead of style width, let's use CSS class because this is a good practice. I already prepared one class, so let's copy it from here. And instead of our inline style, let's use class HTML attribute. And let's paste our class here. I will use the same class for our question form and also for our parent div. Okay, so what we have actually here, we have parent div that will take 100% of a screen width, and we have two child divs that will take equal parts in the inner part of that parent div. Okay, for our iframe, let's change our height to 410 pixels. And let's save our changes. Let's go back in our web browser. When we refresh our page, except of our height, everything other is actually same. So let's inspect our document. Let's expand our body. Let's expand our middle part. And let's expand our parent div. So now, this is our map div. And if we take a look below our map div, take a look on this part here. So basically, reason for this is that div is block element, so it always will take complete width of our screen. So we need to change this with our display if or inline flags class. So I will copy it and I will place this class for our parent div. So basically, all divs inside of our parent div will be displayed like inline elements. So if we go back in our web browser and now refresh our page, now we have our divs like inline elements. So if we inspect our web page, now you can see we have our question form and also our map, like inline elements. If we uncheck this property, we can see what's going to happen. Okay, so basically, we can close this. Now we have our map inside of our contact page. You can zoom in or zoom out the content of a map. So basically, this is Google Map inside of our website. In this step, we're going to create our contact form for our contact page. So currently, we have our div for our contact form. So inside of this div, we're going to create everything that is related with our question form. So at first, let's create simple label for our form, like content let's set, send us a question. Okay. For now, we can save this change, and let's see how it looks like in our web browser. So here it is, we have our label for our question form, and let's make some changes for this text. So at first, in the start of this lesson, as I said, I already prepared some styles for our contact form. So I will copy all these classes without body that we currently have inside of our contact page. So let's copy this. Okay, and below our body, let's paste our content. Okay, let's align our code a little bit. So basically, these are classes that we'll use on our contact form to change appearance of elements. So first, let's copy this content question title, and let's apply this class on our span. Let's define class HTML attribute, and let's paste our class here. So next step that we'll do for our parent div, we'll use also class that we have. Let's use contact question class, and I will explain you what we have done for these two elements. So let's paste it here. So basically, with this class, we have changed background color for our div. It's going to be a white color, and this means that only 10% of color will be visible. This is margin button, and we have text that is aligned in its center. With our second class, we have changed color of the text will be yellow, and our font size will be 25 pixels. So let's save our changes and let's go back in our web browser. And here it is. We have our background and also label in yellow color for our contact form. Okay, let's go back and let's start with creating our HTML form. Below our label that we have defined with span, let's define simple HTML form with form start and form end tags. For form start, let's define action, method, and target attribute. Like action, we'll not use any script. You can use any script that you want. Like method, let's set get, and like target, let's set self. So basically, with action, you will do data processing for your form. Now let's create the first input element for our HTML form. Let's create label for first one. It's going to be name field, so let's set name. Okay, and then let's define some new line after it, an input element with type and name HTML attributes. Type for this one going to be text, and name for this one will be name field. So let's save our changes. And let's go back in our web browser and refresh our page. And here it is. This is our first input field for our HTML form where user can enter name. Okay, let's go back in our text editor and let's create a new input field. Let's create a new line after first input field. Next input field will be very similar to the first one, so we can copy content from here. And let's paste it in a new line. So our second field will be surname field. Will be also text field. And we just need to change our name. Instead of our name field, let's set surname field. So let's save our changes. Let's go back in our web browser and let's refresh our page. And here it is. Now we have our name and surname fields. And let's change label that is currently black and it's quite not visible. So let's change this. So for our HTML form, let's define class HTML attribute. Okay, and from styles file, let's use a yellow text class. Okay, let's paste it for our class for HTML form. So basically all letters will be yellow for our HTML form. So now when we refresh our page, yep, here it is. Now we have label for our fields that is more visible. Let's go back in our text editor and let's create a few different fields. So next field that we'll use for our HTML form, we can use content of this one. And let's paste it here. So next field will be age field. So let's change surname to age. Type of field will be number. And let's change name instead of surname to age field. Let's save our changes. So refresh our page. And here it is. We have age field that is number field, so user can enter only numbers in this input field. Let's go back and let's create a new input field. So for next field, we will create the gender and we'll use radio buttons. So let's define input element. Okay. Like type for this input element, let's set radio. Let's set name HTML attribute. Value will be gender. And let's set value for this first radio button. It's gonna be male. Let's set label for this radio button also. Let's set male. And second radio button will be very similar to the first one, so we can copy first one. And let's paste it here. Let's change male to female. Name will be the same. And let's change value to female. So now, when we save our changes and refresh our web page, we have gender radio buttons. So basically, user can select just one option between two available. So let's create one more field here. For next one, we can choose any input element from above and we can copy content of it. Okay, let's paste it here now. So next field will be tel field for telephone number. Type will be tel also. And let's change name instead of age field to tel field. Let's save our tel field. And let's go back in web browser to check our changes. And here it is. We forgot new line after our gender, so let's add that. After female, let's add new line, okay, and save our changes. And here it is. Now we have our tel input field where user can enter telephone numbers. Let's go back in our text editor and let's create one more new field. Okay, let's create new line here. So next field will be type of question. Type of this field will be drop-down select list. So let's define our drop-down with the select start and select end tag. Like content of our select, let's define option HTML element. So now for our start select tag, let's define our name HTML attribute. Name for this field will be type field. Okay, so now for our option, let's define two available options that we will have. First one will be question about course. Okay, so for start option tag, let's define value HTML attributes. Value for this one will be course. And we can duplicate this option. And our second option will be question about lesson. And let's change value also to lesson. Okay, and let's save our changes. We can create new line here. So now if we go back in our web browser and refresh our page, now we have our drop-down select list from which you can choose one of two available options. Okay, let's go back in our text editor and let's create one more input field. Okay, so let's create new line. Next field will be question field. Like a type for this element, we'll use text area. So let's define text area. Basically, user can enter here multi-line text. For start text area, let's define name HTML attribute. Like value, let's set question. And also, we can customize our text area. By default, it will take some height and width, but we can use rows HTML attributes to define number of rows for our text area. So let's set that. Like value, let's set 5. So let's save our changes. Let's refresh our page. And here it is. Now we have text area where user can enter multi-line text for our question form. And last thing that we can do for our form is let's create our submit and reset buttons. So let's go back in our text editor. Let's create some new lines here. Okay, and now let's define our input fields. Basically, that is input element. And let's define type HTML attribute. Let's define submit like a type for this one because this is gonna be our submit button. Let's define value that is label for our button and let's set send. Okay, and this is gonna be our send button. Our reset button is very similar to submit button, so we can copy complete submit button. And let's paste it here. we just need to change type. Let's set type to reset. And also we can change value, that is a label for button. And let's set that also to reset. And here it is. Now we have our send and our reset button, so we can save this. So when we refresh our page, and here it is. Now we have our send, that is submit, and also we have our reset button for our HTML form. Okay, so now we have all input elements that we need for our HTML form, and in the next step, we're gonna customize this a little bit. First, let's change width of our input fields. I believe that our form will be prettier if we have wider fields, so for our first input field or name field, let's define class HTML attribute. And from styles, let's take this width 30 class. Basically, this class will set 30% of width for complete div to an HTML element. In our case, we'll use this one for our input field, so let's paste it here. And now we can copy complete class and let's apply it on other input elements. Okay, we will skip gender because gender are radio input fields, so and this is gonna be the last one. Okay, so let's save our changes. And let's go back in our web browser. Take a look on our form, and voila! Now we have our wider input fields for our contact form. Now let's change appearance of our send and reset button. Inside of our text editor, we need to apply class HTML attribute, and I already prepared two classes. With button yellow class, we will change background color for our button. It's going to be yellow. We'll remove border. This is color for our text. It is gray. And we will use transition effect. For that one, we'll use this hover class that will also change background color, remove border, set color for text, and we'll add some additional padding. So let's copy this class. For our send button, let's define class HTML attribute, and let's paste our class here. So now we can copy this class, and let's apply the same one for our reset button. So now we can save our changes. And let's refresh our web page. And here it is. Now we have our send and reset button with CSS class that we have applied on it. So anytime when we hover on our buttons, we will get that cool hover effect that we set with this hover class. So we have that cool hover effect. Next thing that we can do for our form. Currently, we don't have any restrictions for our form. So if user try to submit HTML form without entering any data, he or she will do that successfully. So let's apply some restriction attributes on our form. For our first input field, let's define required HTML attribute. So let's save this and let's refresh our page. So now when we try to submit form, we'll get validation error that we need to fill out this field. So only when user enters some value, he or she will be able to submit HTML form. Okay, let's use same HTML attribute for other input fields. We'll skip gender because we're gonna set initial value for radio buttons. Also, we'll skip type of question. Okay, so let's save our changes. And let's refresh our web page. So now when we try to submit form, we need to enter some value in this field. Also, we need to fill out our surname field. We need to fill out our age field. We need to fill out our telephone field. And also we need to fill out our question field. Only if we fill out all fields, we will be able to submit our HTML form. So next thing that we can do. Currently for our age field, we are using number-like type of this input field. So user can directly enter number of years. But let's change this. Instead of number type, let's set date type for this input field. So we'll create calendar here. So basically user can enter date like date of birth. So let's save our changes. So let's go back in our web browser. So basically now we have a calendar and user can choose date like date of birth. Also, we can set initial value for our calendar. Currently, we don't have initial value, but let's go back in our text editor and we'll use value to set initial value for our calendar. So let's define that here. Like initial value, we can use any date, for example, 1980 and 1st January. Okay, so let's save our changes. Let's refresh our page. And here it is. I believe this is more intuitive for users because we'll know what we should enter in this field. Also, if you take a look currently, like date of birth, you can choose even dates that are actually in the future. So date of birth in the future, I don't think so. So let's restrict this with max HTML attribute. And like maximum value, let's set any recent date. For example, something like 2020, maybe May, and May 13th. Okay, so let's save this. So let's refresh our page. Okay, so now let's try to choose year. If you scroll down, you will see that we are blocked on 2020. Also, we are blocked on May. And last day that you can choose is 13th May. Next thing, let's define initial value for our gender. So how we can do that? For our gender, we can set female like initial value with checked HTML attribute. So let's save this change. So now when we refresh our page, like initial value for our gender, female will be checked. Next thing that we can change for our form, currently inside of our tel field, we can enter any value that we want, for example, something like this. But we want from our users that they can enter something like format 3 digits, dash sign, 3 digits, dash sign, and 3 digits. So let's do that. For doing that, we will use pattern HTML attribute, so let's define it here. And valid pattern will be 3 values that need to be digits between 0 and 9, and dash sign, once again, 3 digits between 0 to 9, dash sign, and once again, 3 values that are digits between 0 to 9. So let's save our changes. So when we refresh our page, let's fill out our mandatory fields first. Like telephone number, let's set something that doesn't follow our pattern. So now when we try to submit our form, we'll get validation error that we need to follow requested format. This is requested format. So when we try to submit this, we'll be able to submit our HTML form. For our telephone number, we can also use placeholder HTML attribute just to set what is valid format, so user will know what should be entered here. So now when we refresh our page, here it is. This is valid format that we can use, and of course when you start typing, that value will be cleared. Next thing, for our type of question, let's set question about lesson like default value. So how we can do that? This is our drop down, so should we use checked HTML attribute on our second value here? So let's try that. So now when we refresh our page, well, question about course is still initial value. So why is that? Reason for this is that for select, we need to use, instead of checked, selected value. So let's try this. So now when we refresh our page, yep, our question about lesson is now initial value. So for radio buttons, we'll use checked HTML attribute, and for drop-down select list, we'll use selected HTML attribute. And last thing that we can do for our form, for our text area, let's define that user need to enter at least 3 characters. So let's use min-length HTML attribute with value 3. So now, when we refresh our page, first we need to enter all mandatory values. If we enter just 1 character, we'll get validation error that we need to enter at least 3 characters. So any value that contains at least or more 3 characters will be valid value, so we'll be able to submit our HTML form. Now, let's do one thing for our send button. Basically, send button will definitely take values from your form and send to some script for server-side data processing. But in our case, for our send button, let's define simple JavaScript function that will be called anytime when we click on our send button. So let's do that. First, we need to define onClick HTML attribute. Like value for our onClick HTML attribute, let's set question send JavaScript function. Now we need to create this JavaScript function because it currently doesn't exist. So let's go here inside of our head, below our style block. Let's define script block with script start and script end tag. Now inside of this block, we're going to define our JavaScript function. So this is going to be name, so let's copy it. So first let's set this is function, okay, and let's paste it our function here now. Let's define curly braces. Between curly braces, you can define anything that you want to execute, but we'll create simple alert function with text. Your question has been sent. Okay, basically, this is gonna open for us alert pop-up window with this text. So let's save our changes and let's go back in our web browser. So when we refresh our page, and let's press send, and here it is. Now we have our alert with text that we have set like text for our alert function. So basically text is, your question has been sent. Of course, as I said, with the send button or with the JavaScript function, you can set anything that you want to do when user press that send button. Next thing that we can do for our contact page, currently we don't have explicit text about our address. So let's define address text for our contact page. Okay, so let's go back in our text editor and let's do that. Below our div that surrounds our map and our question form, so this is the one, let's create one more div. Okay, inside of this div, first let's define simple B or bold text element with B start and B end tags. Like content for it, let's set our address is. Okay, now in a new line, let's define address HTML element. Okay, and like content for this element from our website, we'll copy address that we have. So this is the one. And let's paste this address inside of our address HTML element. So here it is. So let's save our changes. And let's go back in our web browser. When we refresh our page, now we have our address written in this page, but currently this text is black. I believe it's not visible enough, so let's change this. We'll set our text to be the same color as copyright text. So let's use class HTML attribute. And let's define our gray text. That is a class that we have in our styles file. This is the one. So let's copy it. And let's paste this class here. So now when we save our changes and refresh our web page, we have our address now in a gray color, and it's definitely more visible like this. Well folks, believe it or not, we have finished our first HTML website. Our website has 4 pages. So basically we have home page with image links for our about page that has text about our website. Also we have our course page with the content of our course. And we have our contact page with our contact information and contact form. Also we have navigation with navigation links for the same pages. We also have our links for our social media pages and this copyright link that allows us to send email to some direct email address. And here it is. Okay, so basically, we have completed our website step by step in less than 2 hours. Well folks, this is all for this course. I hope it was helpful and it wasn't too hard or too boring for you. With the knowledge that you grasped from this course, now you're able to build your own website